President Trump continues to push his U.S. Gaza plan.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too.
But the plan is getting a lot of pushback globally.
Trump's plan evokes Jordan's nightmare of being turned into an alternative home for the Palestinians, a vision long promoted by right-wing Israelis.
What are the possibilities that this plan will come to pass?
Nothing that'll happen here. This is what Trump does. He did it in his first term in making grandiose statements that everyone talks about for 4 or 5 days, and then it doesn't produce anything.
Today is Friday, February 7th, and this is The Issue from VOA.
I'm Scott Walterman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori London.
Protesters gathered in Amman, Jordan on Friday to show solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza and condemn a proposal by U.S. President Donald Trump for the U.S. to take over Gaza and resettle Palestinians elsewhere. President Trump talked about the plan again on Friday.
It's been very well received, where basically the United States would view it as a real estate transaction where we'll be an investor in that part of the world, and no rush to do anything.
Palestinians in Gaza say they're determined to rebuild their own seafront restaurants and hotels and dismissed Trump's vision of creating a so-called Riviera of the Middle East, emptied of its population and under U.S. control.
We don't want to see everybody move back and then move out in 10 years. This has been going on for 50 years, much more than that. We just want to see stability. That would be having us have that particular piece in that particular location, I think would show great stability and would lead to great stability in the area for very little money, very little price.
According to this report by Reuters correspondent Lucy Fielder, Jordan's King Abdullah plans to warn Trump that his plans for resettling the Palestinians and taking over Gaza will inflame the region, threatening his kingdom's stability and peace with Israel.
US President Donald Trump's plan to resettle Palestinians from Gaza in Jordan is a recipe for radicalism. That's the stark warning Jordan's King Abdullah plans to deliver when he meets Trump in Washington on February 11th, according to 3 senior Jordanian officials. Relocating the Palestinians will spread chaos through the Middle East, he'll warn, threatening Jordan's peace treaty with Israel and even the kingdom's existence. Trump's plan sparked protests in the Jordanian capital Amman on Friday. Abdullah said this week he rejected any attempts to annex land and displace Palestinians. One source said he'd made a flurry of calls to regional heavyweights Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar to muster support. Jordan absorbed more Palestinians than any other state after Israel's creation in 1948. By some estimates, they make up more than half of its population of 11 million. Trump announced a plan on Monday for the United States to take over Gaza after resettling the Palestinians in neighbouring countries. A White House briefing on Monday modified that idea, saying instead that Palestinians would be temporarily relocated for the rebuilding process. Trump's plan evokes Jordan's nightmare of being turned into an alternative home for the Palestinians, a vision long promoted by right-wing Israelis. Amman fears it would pave the way for the expulsion of 3 million Palestinians from the neighbouring Israeli-occupied West Bank, where violence has surged. Jordan has been a close Western ally since independence from Britain in 1946 and hosts US forces. It signed a peace treaty with Israel in 1994. According to Marwan Muasher, a former foreign minister who helped negotiate that deal, the main justification for doing so was to prevent a Palestinian state being set up in Jordan. Even Jordan's establishment is now questioning that reasoning, he said. The official said Jordan is preparing for worst-case scenarios, drawing up plans including declaring a state of war with Israel, abrogating the peace treaty, and declaring a state of emergency. Jordan is also a top recipient of US military and economic aid, to the tune of about $1.45 billion a year.
That was Reuters correspondent Lucy Fielder. Meanwhile, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said President Trump's proposal about Gaza was made with a humanitarian heart.
President Trump is an outside-of-the-box thinker and a visionary leader.
You know, a couple of things come to mind, Lori. Number one of the points they make is that they've been talking about a two-state solution since the State of Israel was created in 1947, and it hasn't come to pass. It's not working, and one of their primary points is, let's try something else.
Right. I know Arab leaders are very, very intent on that being the goal, and that's certainly
the two-state solution.
Right, the two-state solution.
All right, let's get some analysis of the president's plan. Joining us is Brian Katulis, Senior Fellow for U.S. Foreign Policy at the Middle East Institute.
Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us. Let's just start off with your overall thoughts and analysis on this plan.
First, it's not a plan. It's a series of statements that publicly have shifted over the last 3 days. There's nothing behind it. I think President Trump even caught his own team off guard in raising it. The earlier statements he made about Egypt and Jordan taking Palestinians from Gaza in the early days of his administration were roundly rejected by those two countries and the broader Arab world. There's nothing that'll happen here. This is what Trump does. He did it in his first term in making grandiose statements that everyone talks about for 4 or 5 days, and then it doesn't produce anything. If anything, it complicates the efforts to get the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas from phase 1 to phase 2, which will be very difficult anyway. And it's counterproductive. It sends all the wrong messages about how to actually realistically and practically resolve this conflict and improve the situation for Palestinians and Israelis alike.
Is there any positive reason that he would do these kind of things, or is it just random and shooting from the hip?
I wouldn't say there's anything positive. He may have been trying to send a reassuring message to some on the right of the Israeli spectrum who want to simply annex Gaza or take it over and forcibly displace Palestinians of Gaza. It's been an agenda item for the right wing in Israel for years. There's hints that they might move to try to annex parts of the West Bank, but that's not a positive thing. I think that Trump may have been trying to curry favor with them. According to his own national security advisor, Michael Waltz, he was simply trying to provoke others to come up with better plans. The reality is that others, including Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, they've been screaming from the rooftops with a plan that they'd like to see a pathway to a two-state solution, one that they would fund and support and even send troops for. But that's the exact opposite of what Trump articulated earlier this week, and in many ways it undercuts that pathway to a realistic two-state solution.
One of the things he said that caught my eye was that he said Israel will hand over Gaza to the United States, and the United States will own it. Obviously, there was a lot of pushback from that statement that Israel would make the decision to give Gaza to the United States. Are Arab neighbors in that region commenting on that? It was very confusing.
Look, again, in my conversations with leaders from the region and their diplomats, no one takes this seriously. So your question even implies a seriousness of purpose behind what Trump might do and that Israel would hand this over to the United States. No one talks about it. If anything, the main reaction is privately, this guy's a clown. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's disconnected from the reality of the region. Publicly, they're going to be polite. They're going to do as the Saudis did 3 or 4 hours after Trump made a statement. They got up early in Riyadh and they issued a statement that basically reiterated their plan, which was we need a pathway to a two-state solution. So again, it's nothing but a waste of time and energy to even talk about it, because there are very few people outside of Donald Trump's head who actually think this has a figment of any possible reality of becoming something actual on the ground.
Does it do harm, aside from, take out a major player who was pushing for the two-state solution? Do people on the ground now look differently at real people, citizens, not leaders, look differently at the U.S. because of this?
Yeah, America's looks clownish. I was just talking to a friend of mine in Gaza about a half hour ago, and he said America's now the big joke because we're all not going anywhere. I mean, some of us may choose to leave if there's some sort of exit, but very few of us will because we want to stay here and we'll live. So just as we've seen the collapse of America's image in places like Canada as a result of Trump's erratic behaviors and his attempts to pressure Canada, attempts that have not actually yielded any positive benefits to the United States, but has come with a big cost, which is the decline in how respected America is. So I think in all of these things, some of Trump's supporters may say, well, he's getting leverage and people are now afraid of what he might do. I think it's the exact opposite. They're increasingly ignoring him. And the reaction that I've seen in the Arab world reminded me of the time that he spoke in his first term to the United Nations General Assembly. And he made a few statements and the world literally laughed at him. And that's what's happening right now, is that very few people are taking him seriously. And as a result, America's being seen as less of a credible partner and reliable partner than it used to be.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this week visiting Washington seemed to be very positive about the idea, but there are some reports that many people in Israel would like to see this happen because they feel traumatized by what happened by Hamas, the attacks of Hamas on October 7th, 2023, and they feel like it would make them feel more secure after that horrible day.
I'm sure that's the case. And it's most definitely the case with the right-wing extremists in Israel who have called for the eradication of Palestinians from not only Gaza, but the West Bank. But again, it won't happen because if you can't get any countries, especially the neighboring countries of Egypt and Jordan, to accept these people, if you can't, it's a principle of international law as well as you can't forcibly remove the people. So it's not a realistic possibility. So it might be nice in the minds of some of those who would feel more secure as a result of it. But the reality is there's no simple panacea here and solution in what Trump is offering. And to spend so much time and energy and airtime talking about it is actually a waste of your time and my time.
Thank you so much. Really interesting. Sure. Yeah.
Good. Thanks for thinking of me.
Brian Katulis, Senior Fellow for U.S. Foreign Policy at the Middle East Institute.
You've been listening to The Issue from the Voice of America.
On behalf of all of us here at VOA in Washington and around the world, thanks so much for joining us.
Follow The Issue on X, Blue Sky, and Facebook at VOA The Issue. And for News 24/7, our website is voanews.com.
In Washington, I'm Lori London.
And I'm Scott Walterman.
We'll chat with you soon.